since the last time we hung out or like talked at all.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. It's, probably since high school. I don't know if we've talked at all since we've graduated, right?
Yeah, it's
Or
been
at least not in person, over to Facebook, sure.
yeah, it's been a minute. I'd say probably the last
Yeah.
time was Dunkin' Donuts, senior year
Yeah.
physics.
Those really were the days.
Uh-huh.
That's still the hardest thing I've done, though, is AP Physics. I don't think anything has ever been that hard.
Yeah,
Which is good.
that was challenging. Because what was Alex? Was it Alex or Chegg or whatever it was or
Oh, yeah.
mastering physics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
like sorry.
No, Google made it a little bit easier.
Uh-huh. That
Yeah.
was a blast. So yeah,
Yeah.
how was like just BGSU?
What I really love about BGSU is that, and I'm sure this might be even true about UT as well, is that no one's really trying to impress anybody. Like no one, everyone's kind of on the same social plane. And I took that for granted until I went to Florence and I met a lot of, people from bigger cities and fancy art schools, and they're fine people. But I can tell there's a little bit more of like a social competition, and it's very weird, and I'm not used to being around that. Because everyone at BG is just kind of like, yeah, we're all here, so we can't be that good. I mean, but we are. We just don't recognize that we are.
Yeah.
No one's like overconfident and cocky. Everyone just is like, yeah, we're here. We're gonna do our best, and then hopefully once we graduate, we'll do big things. But right now, we're here at BG in the middle of nowhere with really nothing to do but talk to each other.
Right. Yeah,
I really
and
love it.
yeah, and so okay, so I took a kind of weird route. I started off with I was in mechanical engineering, did my first co-op, and then I was
Yeah.
like, meh.
Right.
Didn't like it. So
Yep.
I decided to switch to a major that was more kind of relative to what I enjoy doing, which was media
Yes.
communication. And it was all right, but so it kind of focused on broadcasts and journalism and
Right.
the radio industry. And so those are like cool things that it kind of interest me, but from my perspective, you could only do so much with those things. I mean, if you really wanted to, like you can go out to LA or New York or go to one of the big cities and do some crazy stuff, but
Yeah.
it's very difficult to do that. And so I was
Oh,
just trying to like
yeah.
figure out a way to kind of broaden what I learned during my
Right.
time there. And so
Right.
so I guess like some of my classes were really good, but then some of them were like, how was that for BG? Because I know BG, from what I've heard, they have a pretty good program.
Yeah, no, I love BG. What I really gravitated towards the staff they have there. I had a pretty good connection with every one of my design professors, and I still kind of stay in contact with them. You know, yeah, I'd say we have a very good program. And they're constantly revising it, and they're constantly changing things. I don't know if I've only been to BG, so I have no idea if that's normal. But like every year, they change something, which is good and bad because we're figuring it out as they are. And so instead of it kind of being this laid out plan that's been working for years, which also have good and bad parts of it, they're kind of figuring it out too. So it might not work. We're all kind of guinea pigs constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Which if it was like a program that has been, super established, it would be a little bit less rough drafty, which
Yeah.
which is, it is what it is. But the going, and talking to the professors is where I, outside of class, is where, I learned what I wanted to learn, because you kind of get to ask, you can ask whatever you want. You can kind of find out about them, their background. And with that, you know what questions to ask them. Like Todd, we would ask. I would ask historical things because he's like a graphic design history like master. Like he'll just Amy's really good at bringing out the individual inside of you. Jen is really methodical in her process, and what's her name? Shit, Lori. I didn't have Lori, so that's why I forgot her name. Lori. She's just like really fucking intense, like business. Like
Yeah.
she's someone totally shit on you and critique, but is the one that cares the most if you succeed or if you fail. Like she's the one that cares the most constantly. And I think she's been around maybe the longest in the program. Like I think she used to be the head of the program. So they're all badass in their own ways. And then there was also Liz, who's like younger, and she kind of brought that young energy. So they all have their own strengths, and they recognize that, and they kind of all come together like the Avengers. So
Heck yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Not like DC.
Yeah, that's right.
So you are very good at what you do, from what I have noticed. So
Wow.
Yes. So I guess just like how you've kind of gotten to how far you've come so far, would you say that a lot of it was your teachers guiding you, or did you have to do a lot of it kind of independently on your own and kind of push yourself? Because with me, there were definitely some classes where I had to be pushed, but a lot of it, I did a lot of stuff on my own.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely had to do a lot on my own. And I think that because I had been kind of doing my own thing since high school, and I wasn't, as I wasn't in any art classes in high school, so I really didn't know anything about art until I got to college.
Mm-hmm.
But I was already doing my own thing, so I didn't really care that much about the rules because I hadn't been indoctrinated to care.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had already things that I cared about. And so I just kind of developed my own way of working, and I didn't really trust myself. I didn't think that I was really that good until I got to a certain point. I think it was like halfway through junior year, where I finally did like a class project that I liked. I liked the way it looked, and I liked the way it turned out. And that's when I started to trust myself. Also, at this whole time, like since like sophomore year, I was texting back and forth with Joe Perez, who's one of Kanye's ex-designers and creative directors.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of found each other on Instagram. But he's kind of been really, really helpful because whatever I couldn't get from my professors, I would ask him and be like, because he didn't go to design school. He was he graduated with a film degree, and then he got hired by Kanye to blog for him. So he didn't get hired to be a designer. And then Kanye just needed designs, and so he was like, probably gonna fire Joe. And Joe was like, no, don't fire me.
Look what else I can do.
Yeah. So Kanye's like, well, I need some album cover work for we're releasing these Good Friday singles where basically they release these songs that weren't on the album every Friday, and they needed something that they can quickly make and iterate on, and they would look the same but different every time. And so he did those Good Friday singles, and that was kind of like a tryout, and kind of like, okay, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. And then he gave him this massive project, which was the Cruel Summer album. He had to create the album cover for that, which, some album covers like take a day and some take a whole summer. This literally took the whole summer. There was, I think, 200 or 300 different iterations of the cover until they got to the one final version. And it involves a lot of Photoshop, 3D rendering. It's just animation, just like tons of things all coming together. And it started off from like a photo that Baby and Montique took while they were out in I don't remember where they were. But there's this really cool like Venetian ceiling, and they photographed that, sent it to Joe, and Kanye was like, I want the cover to somehow come from this. And so they basically just made 300 versions and came to a good one. So he learned from working, and so he had a totally different perspective than any of my professors. And so he was able to answer questions in a totally different way from me. Basically, he's very reference-based because he was running Kanye's blog, which is basically posting like tons of art, design, fashion, architecture, and basically trying to be the tastemakers of the world. And Kanye could do that because he's Kanye. And so he basically he said that it felt like he was at art school, but he condensed what most people get in like 4 or 5 years into like just a few months or something. And that happened pretty much every other time he worked on a project with Kanye, which was constantly. And so now he actually has his own Instagram, or a second Instagram, called the Options Archive, where he posts one to a few basically rough drafts or old iterations of projects that never came to light. And there's over 167,000 things. And he said that if he posted one a day, it would last 400 years. So
that's a lot. It's a long time.
That's a long time. Yeah. He's just been super helpful. And so basically all the covers that I really idolized in high school, he made them. And so I would just say, hey, how did you make the Pain cover by Pusha T? And he's like, oh, he would tell me. So I could learn just by hearing him, kind of spout off how he did things and learn how insane kind of his work ethic was that he got from Kanye. So that definitely pushed me like crazy because I constantly wanted to impress him. Every single time I made something, I would want to send it to him. So I wouldn't, but I'd want to. I'd send him, I'd try to curate, not bother him because he's busy. But whenever I felt like something was really good, I'd send it to him. He'd always be like, yeah, it's cool. It's fun. And I'd be like, I don't know if he likes it or not. Like, I really still don't know.
Yeah.
He's seen everything. He's not impressed by anything anymore. So unless you're like God tier, which I am not yet. But he's just great. So to answer, that was a long-winded way of saying, yeah, I did a lot on my own. I did a lot in school. But the reason I think I could kind of experiment on school projects as much as I could was because I was honestly putting my best foot forward in my own personal work outside of class, because I didn't like the whole concept of, like, I don't mind pleasing clients or art directors, but for some reason pleasing a professor is so annoying to me because it's not something for them. It's just something, it's like they're just kind of like an added layer. Like, I respect their opinion, but as like the deviant in me, I always want to like do something that they're not gonna like.
Oh, same, absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely. So with me, a lot of my classes were kind of broadcast focused. So my last class I took was basically we did a college version of our own news station, right? It's called UT10 News. And so for the last, we have to come out with a like our own story every week. For the last week, what I really wanted to do, but I knew I'd get yelled at so bad for this, so I didn't do it because I didn't want to break any like relationships or anything. But what I wanted to do was I really wanted to take an Anchorman approach to it. So like Will Ferrell, how he's like, this just in, it's like just really cliche and overdone, but I knew I'd get yelled at, so I didn't. But I really wanted to. But no, in one of the previous podcasts, I was talking to one of my home slices. He's gonna be on national television for broadcasting. He's crazy, but he not like currently, but give him 5 years, he'll be there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But so we were talking about how when it comes to college majors or fields where it's not necessarily engineering or nursing where it's all facts but more kind of subjective, that the grades shouldn't matter as much. It should be more it should be more about how much you've improved since the beginning of the course.
Oh, totally.
And
it's about a lot, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and just a lot of the times they don't necessarily grade that way, and there are some obvious reasons for that. But then I think there are still definitely ways where you can kind of implement a way where you kind of change that. Because for like my audio production classes, I could just whip something out in 30 minutes and I get an A. And
right,
it's like,
right,
I
right.
didn't really try for that.
Yeah,
And
I've had classes like that before. Yeah,
and I feel like media communication, you can make that as difficult as engineering, but
right,
they just don't. It's because that's kind of like the I guess the stereotype is that communication is kind of just like the easier major or whatever, and engineering is harder. Obviously you have different skills, and like
right,
you can definitely make media communication much more
right.
difficult. And so I was kind of expecting it to be not as difficult as engineering, but I was also kind of disappointed just because like
Yeah,
just with going over like Adobe software, there's so much you learn in those software, or just like any of the
right.
software that they covered the very basics on, and they didn't really dig deep into, which is a bummer.
That's like that sounds like VCT at BG. Like, they teach you a lot of things, but it's across such a broad spectrum. You're basically just dabbling in like a million things,
hmm
instead of diving deep. Um, and that's good
Yeah,
and bad.
I
I prefer to dive.
so this is my own personal take on it, but they should kind
Yeah,
of give off the idea that for some of these majors like media communication, if you just stick to the course and get your 4.0, you're not necessarily going to get a degree, but
right.
they should have some sort of like entrepreneur class that everyone has to take, where they force you to basically be independent and learn how to sell it yourself. 'Cause I think that's a
Yeah.
really important thing that you'd have to be able to do.
Oh,
That
certainly.
and just being like self independent, like even though you graduate, you still got to keep learning stuff. So like I'm on lynda.com. I actually got lynda.com for free through my public library here at Toledo, which is nice.
Wow.
So, oh
That's pretty.
yeah. But it's like
And
it's with how fast everything just keeps changing, you got to keep up with it. And if you think you know enough, you don't. You never know enough, especially
yeah.
when it comes to like this kind of field. Just because
Right.
there's always something new out. There's always something where like maybe it's not even your main field, maybe it's something that's related to it, but just for example, if me like learning CGI, like you can kind of connect that to video production. There's like the more things you know, the more creative you can be, because creativity is just combining two things together. So if you know how to do more things, you can do more.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I went on a spiel. I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Doesn't matter. That's how my brain works, though. Like, I have ADHD, so
Uh-huh.
I can't even one thing at once. So no, I totally followed. Yeah,
You
I
listen.
totally agree.
Sorry.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh, you listen to the Collective podcast?
What's the collect? Is that what this is?
No, no. This is straight out of college.
Oh, that's right. No, I remember. Yeah,
The
yeah,
number one podcast out there for podcasts that are called straight out of college. Cause okay.
I definitely want to listen to some of them. I do listen to a lot more podcasts now.
Uh
I
huh.
want to get in. A couple of my other friends have started podcasts too. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Have you been listening to Scott's podcast? Scott and Tyler.
No, but I've heard of it. I think Quentin told me about it.
It's
What are they? What's it like? The theme of it?
uh
Or no theme?
just they kind of talk about whatever's trending in news, and there's goofballs, and
Right.
it's super entertaining.
Okay.
And they'll have like a tier list where they'll like, kind of like rank things. So I think they did one with pop, and
Oh, that's funny.
I was throwing shade at them because they were giving a lot of shit to Verner's, and like, yeah, Verner's ginger ale, it's not the best tasting pop, but it is the first pop. Sorry.
Real. It's my favorite ginger ale. I think.
I personally can't dry more, but it's not the best tasting pop out there. I agree with that. But it was the first pop created, and it
It was the
all,
first pop created.
ever. It was used as a medicine, so it's also kind of healthier than all the other pops out there. Because apparently, like
Yeah,
ginger is healthy
yeah.
for you, something. But yeah,
That's crazy.
so yeah, I was like, bro, you can't rank that last. I'm like, what?
No, that's the OG. Wow, Verner's. Holy cow! I had no idea that was the first one.
I think they made it in like Detroit or something. So
Yeah.
the more you know.
Holy shit! Yeah, no, I love Verner's. I think it's a really it's almost like the whiskey of pop to me. It's
Yes.
like kind of intense and it tastes like something an adult would drink. Unlike
Yeah.
like
It has a it has a very special taste
yeah.
to it. But
Have you ever had Moxie?
Voxy?
Moxie. With
Moxie.
an M.
I don't believe I have.
I think it was the favorite pop of one of our presidents. I don't remember which one. Roosevelt, maybe? I don't know. But basically, they still sell it, and it has the same kind of classic packaging. So if you see it in the stores, it's like this orange label that says Moxie on it, and it has like this just like old-fashioned illustration of a guy drinking some Moxie on it.
Nice. It's very meta.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like it's like a it's almost like root beer ish, but it's not. If that makes sense, it takes a little bit more like medicine than root beer, but in a good way.
Gotcha.
Some people hate it though, like so it's really polarizing. Like my mom hates it.
Mm-hmm.
My dad. So it's like a you know, you're either you love it or you hate it. There's really no in between.
Yeah. But yeah, so Collective Podcast. I think this is a podcast that you'd really like. So this is this dude by the name of Ash Thorpe. Are you familiar with Joe Rogan?
I am.
So the way I see it, he's like the Joe Rogan of design, basically. He does all sorts of like UI and design, all sorts of crazy stuff, and modeling, and basically he just kind of has all different types of creative people on his podcast, and they just kind of shoot the poop about whatever they're working on and how they got to where they are and all sorts of cool stuff. But it like his mindset like reminds me a lot of kind of whenever I see you on social media. I think you guys think very similarly. But
that's great.
Yeah, I think you should check it out. It's a good one.
It's called The Collective. I'm going to subscribe to it right now.
The Collective Podcast.
Yeah, I'm always looking for new podcasts.
It's a good one.
I just recently to Rick Rubin. Do you know who Rick Rubin is?
I do not.
He basically is like one of the, music legends because he's worked with everyone from like, I think he worked with like the Beastie Boys, Kanye, Jay-Z, really anyone you can think of. He's worked with them as like a producer / sound engineer. And or a curator. I don't know exactly what his role is, but basically he's just like there making sure everything is really tight, consistent, and good. And he brings out kind of the individual in every artist, which I don't know if there's really anybody like him. I think he's really kind of one of a kind in that way. But I think he founded Def Jam Recordings, like the record label, I think. I'm almost positive he did. I think he started it in his college dorm room.
Nice.
And he almost got kicked out of his college dorm room because of it.
That's cool.
So yeah, no, he's super zen, and I feel like I always have to be around or listening to very zen, like calm people, because if I'm not, I start to get ramped up and excited and angry or really happy. I just really need to be around people that are like, no, it's gonna be all right. Like I need to be around that energy.
Like chill people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yes.
Absolutely. I really want to go to California. I feel like California is very chill.
Yeah.
Have you ever been out there before?
LA. Maybe not LA. What?
Have you ever been out to California or West Coast before?
Yeah. When I was younger, my family used to vacation a lot, and we went to San Francisco and a few other places, I think, in California. But I haven't been there in a long time. I've only really been kind of in this vicinity, like New York. I was just, I lived in Providence, or I lived in Massachusetts and commuted to Providence. My family goes to Virginia a lot, or at least they used to. So we don't go that far out very often because it's, it's far.
Yeah.
I was out there.
I know Gregory's trying to move out there.
I was about to say that, yeah. But what's funny about that, after I got in my accident, me and my parents went to Steak and Shake, and it was like 2 a.m., and there was Greg eating steak burgers with all of his film friends.
Mm.
And I was like, holy shit. And so, I hadn't seen him in so long, and so we talked for a while, and he was like, yeah, I'm going to be moving to LA in the summer. I was like, oh shit. So I never want to move to LA. I feel like I would not get along with anybody.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of kind of egocentric, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a lot of opportunities out there. I personally would like to go in the California area just for the networking opportunities.
Oh, certainly.
But
that's where I went to school was California.
Mm-hmm. I'm really curious to see how it is because I've heard a lot of stories about it. But I think if I do want to end up going out there, now is not the time, just because I am. Like, you want to meet the right person at the right time. If I go now, I'm going to meet them at the wrong time because, like, I don't think I'm good enough yet. And also, I need to pay off my college debt. So, moving to California is not the best move for me right now.
Yes. No, I'm in that same boat. Yeah, for the longest time, like, I didn't want to, because everyone's just like, oh, just cold call all these people, whatever. But I didn't feel like I wanted to do that until I had something to really show them that I was, like, really proud of. Because before that, it's just kind of like practicing until you've made something that you truly, whether anybody else agrees or not, like, you, like, really, really love that thing you made.
Yeah.
And so recently I crossed over to that side, and I've made several things that I'm very, very proud of. And so even if no one else agrees with me, I can sell myself very well because I love, like, the project that I worked on or something. And if I didn't, I'm not going to show it to you.
Right.
It happens a lot where I end up scrapping and not showing anybody the projects that might even get me hired, but I feel like that's not me. And so I don't want to get hired for something that I didn't really enjoy. That's
important, because if you can't believe in yourself, then other people aren't going to believe in you either, because it's going to show. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're not able to do as good of a job because you didn't really care about it. And so you're not really connected to that vision. You're not really synced up with it. So you're just kind of like a robot at that point, just kind of listening to commands. And I don't want to do that. Some people are good at that. Like, I'm not good at following these kind of rules.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so you just applied for a job. Are you allowed to give any information about that, or is it, like, low key, or?
Oh, I mean, as far as I know, I can. I mean, they're an agency in Columbus. They own a lot of restaurants and bars in the Ohio State area, and they need some young people to help out with the college crowd. So here. So they've been testing me out. I've been working on some projects for them to kind of see how good I am and how much of a fit I am. I've never had to do that before, though. Like, usually it's kind of like either on board or you're not. I've never had to try out. Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of did with the t-shirt place that I used to design for. But it was really easy. They're like, okay, here's an hour. Here's a couple very quick assignments. They're like, can you... I think they gave me, like, a very complicated illustration, and they're like, simplify this. Basically, just take out elements. I'm like, okay, I get that. Like, there's a lot of very easy things that they had me do. But this was like, create an identity. Here's a week, and I'm like, Jesus.
That's
like,
cool.
It was like, but I had a lot of ideas initially, and so I just got lucky, and I was able to create something that I really liked.
Yeah. Was it, like, just any identity in general, or was it, like, based towards an idea that they gave to you?
It was a bar in Ohio State that they weren't working on, but they're like, we would want to see what happened if we rebranded them. And so I kind of came up with at least the starting framework of something that could be a rebrand. It's obviously not, you can't create an identity, like a good identity in a whole week, but I believe I created something that would be good enough to work from. So.
Yeah. And, like, did they give you any information behind the bar, or was it just like, all right, here's this bar, and go?
Right. No, that's basically all they did. They told a little bit of information, and then they're like, okay. Well, she wanted to kind of let me do whatever I wanted, so just to see where I would take it without having much direction. And so that was nice because when you're guys, that initial project I didn't get paid for. I wanted to get paid, but I couldn't negotiate well enough, and because I really needed. So, no, but it was a lot of fun. They've been really cool and flexible and good at communicating whenever I have a question, and they seem to respect me as a designer and not want to push me around. It's very easy to get pushed around in the creative field, so. We're not respected as much as I think we should be. It's ridiculous. Like really big and famous, like no one gives a shit about you.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, it is.
That's actually, so I've been really interested in this kind of stuff recently. So just a little bit of background behind me and like what I've been doing recently. So I've been doing I guess you could call it grunt work, basically.
Grunt work, did you say?
Grunt work, yeah. Basically, I just I do product photography as well as some of video stuff for products, and I just kind of put stuff together. So it's a lot of Photoshop, Premiere Pro, a tiny bit of After Effects, not really too much, but it's basically just kind of your typical starter job. I've been doing that for a year now.
Nice.
But more recently, I just kind of got into a startup that I've just been super passionate about. It's been a lot of fun. And so, so it's a software company. So it's called Winhouse Software. Basically, we build apps, we build websites, all sorts of fun stuff. And so I am part of the design team. So I've been doing a lot. What's your opinion on Adobe XD, really quick?
What is it?
Are you familiar with Adobe XD?
Adobe XD. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said. I haven't used it, but I've used Sketch, which I believe is very similar to it.
Mm-hmm.
I for some reason the industry has been kind of pushing back against Adobe a lot, and so everyone's just like, XD sucks, but I'm sure it's like almost the same thing. I don't even think there's much of a difference.
It's convenient. It's very, very user-friendly. It took me like an hour to pick up. It was super easy to learn. I'm pretty sure, I think Figma, I think is what it's called, is a popular one. I haven't really used that one yet, but yeah, so we've just been doing a lot of Adobe XD, Photoshop, Illustrator, all that kind of stuff for just building design. And so, so like one of the things that we've been learning on this fun journey is how important like figuring out what your identity is, and also what like clients' identities are, so that way you can kind of whatever you're designing build around that. And it's just been like the amount that I've learned just in the past 3-4 months has been like so much more than what I've learned in the past couple years at college. It's insane. But so I guess going back to your bar thing, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So I guess like the reason as to like why it's important to figure out your branding and identity, because according to like some data that someone mentioned on Twitter, so it must be official, right? Well, according to according to some data from some website, the thing that younger kind of demographics really fall for is authenticity, and that's like a key thing of what makes you attracted either to some sort of company or brand or something, is like whatever they represent, is that actually who they are, or are they being fake, you know? And like, and people can pick up on if you're being fake really quick. So like, for example, like Wendy's just talking, you know, just throwing shade at people, you know, 'cause it's like, okay, you know, I throw shade too. Okay, we can relate. But so I don't know. I feel like that's something that's really cool when like going into design that I never really thought of before. So like when I first kind of picked up design, I was like, okay, how can I make this look flashy and cool? And you know, it's like, okay, that's cool, but more importantly, how does this represent what this company's like stands for, and symbolize like what they're all about and all that.
No, exactly. Yeah, I'm all about basically what I say I do is I translate what they tell me about their product and what I learned from the product into an image. Like I I don't pull in something that, like, basically I'm trying to avoid dishonesty in the design even. So I don't want it to look like something that it isn't. Want it to look exactly how it is, and with nothing, no visual dishonesty. Because I think that there's a lot of that out there. People just willy-nilly throwing shit around, referencing things that don't matter or make sense or are appropriate. And it's just very irresponsible to do. So when you're young and you're starting out, I think you can just do whatever you want. But when you're actually doing things that affect the world, I think you should be very careful about how you're treating the design.
Right. So this is actually something that I was kind of pondering at work a few days ago. I was listening to some podcast or something. I forgot what exactly it was, but so I was thinking just kind of about marketing, and so don't want to get politicsy. We can talk politics later, but so one thing that I've kind of noticed, just using this as an example, like no politics related, talking about my boy Andrew Yang, right? So just completely ignoring politics, he went from being a nobody to having over 1 million followers in a year, and so. He said that the reason why that happened was so they treated it as a marketing strategy. Then obviously after the Joe Rogan podcast, like it blew up, and then they just gained traction from there on out. And so basically why that kind of happened is because according to what people make of him is that so it's kind of like more authenticity versus when you see the typical campaign ads, it's just vote for this person because blah blah blah. And so I remember, so I'm obsessed, right? I have an addiction to Andrew Yang now, unfortunately. So so I was listening to one of his speeches, and he was like, all right guys, how many of you came to this rally, or whatever you want to call it, because you heard of my commercial in Iowa? And like no one raised their hands, right? And like this is something that they're spending millions of dollars on, and then some people are yelling out, no, we just heard about it, my friend told me. And so like so this kind of got me thinking, so digital marketing is obviously very important, right? Just because for one thing, I think just kind of name recognition is important, because if you don't know they exist, you can't really have an opinion of them. But besides that, I personally think word of mouth is important. What's your opinion though? So like comparing word of mouth to digital marketing, so I think word of mouth, the pro you have is you have the authenticity, so it's easier for it to get trending. Whereas there's only one or two people talking about it first. Whereas with digital marketing, you could have everyone see it, but then you don't really know, like, for example, if it was a 30-second ad or something, you can only get so much out of that. So like, what's your opinion of word of mouth versus digital marketing?
Yeah, well, I would say people trust people more than they trust their phones, I think. I don't know if it's true, but that's how I see it. And so if you can somehow get it to a point where you can spread just from that, I don't know how you do that though, because even the Joe Rogan podcast is digital marketing.
Yeah.
And so you always have to start there, and then I think they're connected. I don't think you can really market yourself at this point without digital or physical, mainly digital though, marketing. And then from there, it can spread into work. But I think it's very difficult to start that way.
Yeah.
Unless you can, like, you have the power to, like, okay, 1 million people come to this room right now. Let me tell you about something.
Right.
But even then, don't listen to those, because that's just like pyramid scheme shit.
Yeah.
Like, actually does that anymore.
Yeah, it's just a very interesting thing I was thinking about recently.
Yeah.
I think what I think is that I think word of mouth is important initially, and then once when people know of your existence, then digital marketing, I guess, just so. I don't know. I think podcasts is like a good fuse of it, because if you're listening to it, you can kind of get a feel for whatever someone is trying to represent. Like, for example, I think if you were to get the Wendy's manager on the Joe Rogan or some popular podcast that relates to like restaurants, I think, and if they were just their self and just, you know, talked about whatever it is that they do, that would kind of create that kind of authenticity that would make a connection between you and Wendy's. Like, maybe they might get more people. I don't know. But it was just something I was thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, people, there's definitely a large market of people that trust Joe Rogan, and they trust the people that he brings on. And that can be used for good and bad, because he has people that aren't really so good, like Alex Jones on. And sometimes he does shit on them, which is great, and he does it to their face. But you see that it's like cordial and polite, and so at the end of the day, it has the power of humanizing people that are very bad, or if you want to think about it that way, you could say are just irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's the only issue I have with Joe Rogan is his best attributes are also his worst attributes. He can humanize anybody.
Yes, he's very flip-floppy. Like, he sees all opinions, is one way of saying it, I think.
Right. Which isn't always good, because you don't always want to hear the opinion of a racist. That might spark racists. Like,
right.
That's learn to be racist is they learn that they learn why they hate someone. They're like, oh, I guess I hate them too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
It's tricky. It's very sticky.
Stupid gay frogs.
Yeah. No, Alex is hilarious. Like, if he wasn't so, you know, bad for
over the top.
Country, yeah, and if he was just doing it as like a parody of himself, it would be amazing, an amazing, you know, body of work. But and maybe he is playing a character, but he's doing it with an actual agenda, and that's where you know, it gets bad. So,
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Yes, and I don't watch the Joe Rogan show very often, so I could be wrong, but I don't see a whole lot of all the clips that kind of pop up on my YouTube or whatever. Always seem to be men that are being interviewed by him, and so I don't know if maybe his ones where he interviews women just aren't as popular, or maybe they're just not as controversial. But like Elon Musk, Alex Jones,
right.
You know, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, all these guys, all these are men, and when you put a men, as Yang said, when you put men, we're all so stupid. We're just idiots. So you need to have like 50% women to balance it out, because we're just dumb.
Yeah.
We'll say things.
Yeah, I did. Now that you mentioned that, I have noticed. I don't think I've ever listened to any woman on his podcast. I know he had Tulsi Gabbard, but that, like, other than that, I don't really know. I don't think I've really.
Surprise.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very interesting. Like, and I really can't remember if he's had like a black person on either. Oh, I think Hannibal Buress might have been on once. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's, and I don't even know if it's intentional or if he doesn't think about it, or if he's just picking the people just seems to think are you know, the most important at that time. There's just, in my opinion, a lot of very important you know, on right now that could be interviewed. But I'm sure that he actually has had them on, and I just don't know about it.
Yeah. If you are interested in, so it may not be the most accurate podcast, but because it's got some dishonest stuff going here and there. But if you want to listen to a very interesting episode, the Joe Rogan and Alex Jones podcast is it is wild.
A little bit of it. I think at some point Alex Jones called himself retarded, right?
Probably.
I think he's like, to be honest, I'm a little bit retarded. I remember that soundbite.
I remember he kept asking for one of the dudes that was there. He's like, choke me out. I'm like, what are you? What? It's like, I like
Yeah,
it.
it's crazy.
He's a
I did
bizarre
watch.
dude.
It's just mind blowing. Yeah, I can't believe that he exists. He's like a real person that breathes and has a family and like talks to people and like goes to he eats breakfast every morning. Like it's just a weird thought in my mind.
Hmm.
Brushes his teeth. Like I can't believe that it's like that's a human being, Alex Jones.
I mean, hey, maybe he's not a human being.
Maybe he's a gay frog.
Maybe it's just all an act, you know?
Right. The gay frog is the new gay fish.
That's right.
Yeah.
um. All right. So going back to design stuff. So I've kind of been keeping up with your social media, um, and I've noticed. So like, you kind of said at first, you didn't really think about what you did. You just kind of did it, and then the more you got into it, the more you kind of had like a thought process behind it. So like, how is your process from beginning to end, and how is that adapted from where you started?
Yes. So I'll say how it is now because I have to really think back to remember how I worked before
Mm-hmm.
because I have no idea at this point. Now, when I talk to whoever I'm working with, or if it's me, I don't literally talk to myself, but I ask myself the same sort of questions. Um, like, basically, I try to squeeze out as much information about let's say, so I worked, Brett Grove?
Yeah.
I worked with that family to redesign their logo, and they're still kind of rolling things out now, and the packaging and that cider. So basically, I just squeeze out as much information as I can. So like, how long have you guys been in business? Have you guys always had the same logo? What are your other logos? What was the year that this started?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, and that's not even all there's so many things that I ask. I just can't remember because it all just depends on the project. But if it's an album, what are your favorite albums? What are your favorite album covers? Tell me about how you started it in music. Tell me about this album, what it means to you, how you started it. How do you think that your music sounds? How do you think that it should look? There's just a lot of things that I ask, and basically what I'm doing is I have basically all this stuff everywhere, all these things that they told me, and I try to create like a hierarchy. Like, what are the most important things that I can
Mm-hmm.
that I have to communicate? So like the major things, I try to like put like the top, let's say 3 things that I should communicate immediately, and then all the little other things I try to kind of hide in there as little Easter eggs or just little things that you maybe won't get the first time, but if I explain it to you, you would see that
Mm-hmm.
every aspect of it is rooted in something that they said, and that kind of keeps me from making just arbitrary decisions. It's all based on something, usually, and sometimes it happens on accident. Like for this album that I've been working on forever, and so is he. He's been working on it for like 10 years, and I've been working on it for just a couple. The visuals for it, it's like this experimental hip hop record, but I just told him to explain to me what his music is, and he told me this really cool thing about how he's like, it's like cosmic. He said he was a transient being, translating cosmic messages through these dirty old computers in his basement, and it's like, and he was having an existential crisis while it was going on. So he's giving me these very descriptive, but not specific, like, as in he's not saying, can you like put like my face there with like bullet holes through the letter? Like, he's not telling me
Mm-hmm.
specifics. He's giving me a vague description, and I translate that description into an image. And how I started was I didn't know what I was going to make, but I started the process basically how he worked, and how he described his process, which was basically he was staring at his computer all these years and these dirty old computers. And so what I did was I had all these like do you know what like a slow shutter camera does? Like basically when something's moving, it kind of like trails, and so instead of like it being like let's say you take a picture of a hand, it kind of like your hand kind of like smudges, and so you can see the hand kind of like a bunch of times, if that makes sense.
Is it like a blur or is it?
Kind of. It's kind of like a blur, but it's like
It's like a blur, but you could see.
It's like and so it's like, you know how like when your computer's like broken or something and you drag a window and it iterates itself a whole bunch. It's like that kind of, only but for a photo, I guess is how I could describe it. Only it happens like continuously, so it's not like jagged. It's like smooth, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can make it jagged too, but whatever. So I had kind of these experimentations that I had done with my phone, of my face and my hand, that I think I'd done as far back as like in high school. I just was like, oh, these are cool. And so I started to do them again, and I did it with my hand and, you know, other body parts. And I brought it into Photoshop, and they're really low resolution. And I brought it into Photoshop, and I made it like black and white. And then my computer has, you know, like how blue light kind of makes it so it's harder to sleep at night. And so you have like these yellow filters that kind of make your screen yellow to make it so you can sleep better. I had one of those on in my computer. And so I had this image, this black and white image of my hand, this distorted image of my hand on my computer, and the yellow filter over it. And then I photographed that image on my computer with my digital camera with the flash on. And so the flash brought out like this blue like center into it, and the yellow filter made the rest of it, you know, yellow. And so after kind of pumping up and also you could see all these smudges and dust particles on the screen itself because the flash was on. And so basically I took it into Photoshop and I cleaned it up and I upped the contrast. So and then I noticed this is like kind of interesting, but I didn't know what I made. I just knew that it was interesting, and it kind of looked to me how he said it should look. And so I sent it to him. I'm like, what do you think about this? Like, do you think I'm in the right direction? He's like, yeah. And he said, like, it looks like he's like wiping away, you know, almost like he like came out of the shower and he's kind of like wiping away and kind of trying to reveal this like light, this like reaching towards like this like light. And so it was like very existentialist. And the dust particles ended up kind of looking like stars as well, like in a galaxy. And that kind of goes back to him like reaching these cosmic messages. Yeah. And so, because it's on a computer, a lot of it's very pixelated, and so that kind of brings back. So it all just kind of happened magically. Like, I really didn't have a plan. I just experimented a lot, and I worked from the tools that I feel like he worked from. Daniel, that's for a podcast. Yeah. So, and then I created kind of these promo images where I wanted to get these high resolution smudges, and so I had a scanner, and I turned off all the lights, and I didn't put anything on the scanner, but I smudged up the scanner like plastic a bunch, and then I followed the kind of the scanning bar with my iPhone light, and it illuminated all the smudges and dust on the scanner, and so it created these high resolution smudges that I can use for promo images and t-shirts and whatever.
That's cool.
And so and that kind of goes back to like the grungy old computers that I'm referencing from his process. So everything that I do is informed by what they tell me, but I always ask them to be as vague as possible, because when you get specific, that's when it kind of gets stupid, and they want you to do stupid things because they didn't, you know, they're the music person, unless they're like Kanye or something and they can do everything. But usually the music person just does music, and so that's what they know. And so asking them to come up with a visual idea doesn't seem to make any sense to me, unless they all have a really, really good idea. So I do also ask them, you know, do you have any specific ideas but I don't say I'm going to do them. I just want to know about them, because some of them, sometimes they can be really funny, sometimes they can be really cool, sometimes they make a lot of sense. A lot of times they don't, but sometimes they do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it, is I just want them to tell me as much as they possibly can, and then I translate that into an image, whatever that may mean.
Yeah, that's like very very out there. It's going from step 1 to step 2 to step C. That's cool.
Yeah, and it's different every time. But I always start the same way, with just gathering lots of information.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So going to social media. So I was listening to the one podcast with that one dude, and I think you were talking about social media briefly. And so I guess, so from my viewpoint when it comes to social media and making content, I'm personally lazy. I don't really care about bragging. I just want to make work for people so that they can brag, right? So
yes.
But I also recognize that it's important to get exposure, to get out there, because if you don't release your stuff, then how are recruiters going to know that you're good, you know? So it's how do you find that balance? I guess is
right.
It's an important question.
Is a rhetorical question.
However you want to take it. Would you like it to be rhetorical or non-rhetorical?
I guess I'll just wait, sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so what do you think is that fine balance between posting content and just getting work done and doing it? Or because I know some people, they say oh, you got to post all of your work, but maybe some of your work isn't good. No. But then at the same time, maybe some people want to see your process, and so it's all right, well, what do I do?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, I've been trying to figure out how to be more active on social media, and so I've come up with kind of a plan where I want to release one post on Instagram a week for about a year, and so I have all that figured out. But I don't know when I'm going to start, because I want to get enough prepared ahead of time so I can do that. But no, I don't post everything. People would think a lot less of me. I posted everything I did, because I do a lot of bad work too, and I do a lot of work that maybe is good, but I don't really like. So I curate a lot, maybe a lot more than I should, because I have done a lot of things that I don't want anyone to know that I did, but it was integral into how I work as a designer. I've learned a lot. I've learned from every single project I've worked on. But people will think, and it's unfortunate, but they'll think less of you if they see, they'll think that you are only as good as your worst project. And so, like an employer, let's say. And so they'll look at, okay, yeah, he eventually, sometimes he gets lucky and he does something good, but this is what he'll probably give me, is this shit. So I only put work out that I feel like I could, that I'm really proud of, that I feel like there's a lot of reasoning behind it, and or that I think that rappers might like, or ones that I've gotten good reactions about. But there's a lot of curation that you have to do, because the way that you present it is 80% of how people see it. So you could have the most gorgeous design ever, but if you're not presenting it in a way that's palatable or in a way that makes sense, no one's ever going to know or appreciate it. So you have to really, really, and that's an art that I still haven't even gotten close to mastering. It's very, very difficult to present your work in the best light that it can. A lot of it for branding is mock-ups. Because when you see a logo, people are like, okay, whatever. No one thinks of a logo. But when you see a logo on all these things, how it can iterate and do all these different things, that's when it becomes an identity. So, and those are a lot more interesting than for me logo. Unless you're like a really really tight logo designer, like someone that makes like really really unique or it could be detailed. Usually logos aren't too detailed, but if it's like lettering or something, then that's fine. You don't really need mock-ups for that, or if you could, you can make it even better. But I guess just a lot of curation. You have to curate. You can't show everything. I don't think there's anybody. Joe Perez, that Kanye guy, he has so many projects on his site, but I know that he's done a lot more than that. He just takes down, he doesn't upload his ones that aren't his favorite. He only posts his favorites. But that's how many favorite things he makes, because he makes so many good things. He can afford to have like 50 things on his portfolio, while young designers really should have like a solid 5 or even less.
Mm-hmm.
Your best of your best of your best in your portfolio, because like I said, people will assume that you just got lucky, and you'll only will think that you're only as good as your worst one.
Yeah. Going back to like what you can do with logos, and with like you make your original logo, but then all the stuff you can do with it. So I'm very curious about your logo. You have like all this stuff going on with it, but then I remember seeing this. You had, I think it was like on your Instagram story, there's all these different variations of things that you're able to do with the logo. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. So could you kind of explain the meaning behind that logo, and just kind of how you came up with it?
Right. Yeah. So I guess the core is these, like, which I have here, but it's black on black, so I don't even know if you're able to see it that well.
Mm-hmm.
But can I flip it? Yeah, there we go. So this is kind of the core of it.
Yeah.
It's like my face, and that it's like, and I've recently, actually, that's an old version of it, but most people won't be able to tell. It's just me. But it's chopped up typography. So basically what I did was I typed out my name, Liam Ramus, like my design name,
mm-hmm.
in I think like 20 different weights or something of Helvetica, just because I was like, this would be a nice starting point. I didn't think that the first one I'd like, and then I had like a photo of myself, and I just I chopped up the typography like in Illustrator,
mm-hmm.
and so it broke it into all these different pieces, and I just laid the parts that looked like parts of my face on top of it. And a lot of parts I had to take away because it was extraneous and I didn't need it. Kind of stripped it down to the essentials. So that's kind of the base form of it. And I guess the concept behind it is everything that I do is working from things of the past. Basically, I'm breaking up existing things and rearranging them.
Mm-hmm.
And so rarely does anybody even make something that's entirely new. It's always kind of rooted in something they've seen before.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's sort of the what's it called, rationalization for it. And as far as the iterations of it, so actually I won't get to the iterations yet. So the name itself, the Liam Ramus logo type, looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize this when I did it. Again, a lot of it's just me making things and then me realizing why it works and why I like it. I tend to kind of go against the grain with how I work, and I didn't realize until I was pitching this in my design class, because we were making our own identities in class. And I was saying, basically, I want to communicate that I'm going against the grain. I tend to be very experimental. And she was like, that's really interesting, because your name is italicized in the wrong direction. Like, it's going the opposite way. And so, most italicized things, I don't even know if I have any, see, if you can see, like, the third, I don't even know how to focus on Facebook Messenger. But you get it. So
yeah.
Most of the time, it's italicized in this direction.
Right. But you have it going
direction.
to the left instead of the right.
Yeah. So basically, it's just another way of communicating that I'm going against the grain. And I
Yeah.
had been trying to see if that's been done before, and I haven't seen anything like that, which is weird because that's a very simple thing to own. But I feel like I can own it. And so basically, I think that I'll be able to kind of create a whole identity off of in creating my own font, basically, of letters that are kind of italicized in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be kind of a piece of my identity. But going to my one of the iterations, it's a very hard to explain my identity because there's so many different permutations of it, but that's why it's so fun to me. So here are all the different business cards that I've made. So here's like a maze version of my logo.
Yeah.
Here's one with a QR code on it.
You got some sweet business cards, yeah.
Here's just a simple like kind of diagonal line thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, also this has the face in it if you see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, right? Oh no, there's a simple one too. Where's that? Yeah, and here's the really minimal one.
Nice.
So it's basically I wanted to give myself a mark that I can play. I can have fun every time that you see it. I want it to kind of look a little bit different.
Yeah.
And for it to suit whatever context it's at. And I wanted to basically tailor the logo to wherever it is, like a T-shirt, a hat, a business card, wherever, a resume. And I've created my own brand, like clothing brand that I'm starting. I think it would be called like Ramus Wear or something. But I have this kind of like wonky version of the face, and then it says Ramus on the back.
Nice. Now, so one thing I was thinking, going against the tides as to like what everyone else is doing.
Yes.
I kind of took that route earlier today on something I was working on, and I think you can do this too if you really wanted to, and that is using Comic Sans.
Oh, nice.
So one of the apps that it's an app, the idea I created, and I'm kind of pursuing the design side of it now. And I was like, I wonder how this would look like with Comic Sans. So I showed it to my design team, and I was like, what do you guys think? Without telling it was Comic Sans, they're like, Daniel, stop it with the Comic Sans. and so like it kind of matches the logo is kind of a playful looking logo. And so it looks okay, but it could definitely look better. So I did change the font, but
it's hard to nail kind of like anti-design. It's very hard to do. I can't really do it that well.
I think it's one really important thing with that. I don't think I'm there yet, but you have to know the rules before you can break the rules.
Oh yeah.
And I think I think I'm learning very quick, but I still need to learn all the rules first before I can start playing around with Comic Sans.
Yes. It's very hard to break the rules properly, which is what got me in trouble a lot in college because I was constantly like doing the opposite of what people told me to do. They're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Putting in the extra backdrop.
Yeah. But one of the first things that I was taught in design school was something called like Gestalt or Gestalt. I think it's Gestalt principles. Have you heard of that?
It rings a bell.
So basically, it's like how your mind kind of completes an image. So I think one of the main examples is there's like 3 circles, kind of like in a triangle pattern. And there's kind of like a little corner cut out of each one, and so you can see in the negative space that it will form a triangle.
Like closure, kind of.
Yeah. And so your mind basically completes it, and so you can use that principle a lot with logos, and that's actually one of the big parts of the face logo. Well, it's backwards, so you can't really. You're probably looking at it, so you're like, "What the fuck is that?" Because you can't. It's backwards. Because like for some reason iPhones flip things. It makes a lot more sense when it's frontwards.
Yeah.
But basically, it works because your mind sort of completes all these images,
Yeah.
little shapes together, and you can see kind of like a big picture thing.
Mm-hmm. Clojure is my favorite.
So
I love playing around with that kind of stuff. It's like it's my
yeah,
go-to with logos. It's like, how can I make you see something that's not actually there?
yes, exactly. And I've noticed that young people can see my stuff more than old people can, which is good because that's kind of where my market is.
Yeah.
Not as much with businesses though, which is where I kind of stick to my name when I like are talking to businesses like Liam Ramus, because they can read, but when you show them like this crazy face logo, they're like, "What is that?" So yeah, you have to know your market a lot of times.
So another thing that you were talking about on that previous podcast was networking events, going out to networking. That's something that I definitely struggled with over the last year because I really wanted to do CGI. So I was trying to find a group of people that were also passionate about CGI. I was like, meh. So, but recently, with the startup and we've found like a lot of really cool networking events for kind of more entrepreneurship related stuff, but even though it is entrepreneur focused, it's very interesting the amount of people that you'd meet where it's like, yes, it's entrepreneur focused, but they also like to do this, and you also happen to like to do this, and then one thing turns into another. And so, I guess I just found out there is a lot of really cool stuff going on in Toledo, which is nice because Toledo is a cheap place to live. So
yes, exactly.
If you ever want to move out to Toledo and like be roommates or something.
I have some friends that actually are working there at places at Hart and Hanson. So
okay.
I don't know. I got hired there. No one would hire me. I was too crazy. So
yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
But yeah, no. So like my kind of thought process for the upcoming, at least for the upcoming years, I want to stay in Toledo because it's cheap. And with the startup, I can learn a lot without having to work as much, so it's just kind of more efficient, I guess. But yeah, so hopefully hopefully you get that job in Columbus. That'd be sweet. But if you don't, and you want to just like move to Toledo, because I'm gonna need a roommate in like 6 months. I was just thinking it'd be super cool because I think I'm kind of going down the path that you've kind of like what you've actually studied for the past 4 years, and it'd be cool if like we could learn off of each other. I think that'd be super sweet.
Yeah. No, certainly.
But
I need a steady income first, but
that's true. Okay, so this is something I thought about. I think Toledo is going to be the center of Midwestern America in 10 years. And here's why. So, one, it's very affordable to live here. B, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like, there's a lot of businesses starting up, blah, blah, blah. Most importantly, 3, and this is the key part, is they're coming out with these, like, super trains where they basically travel as fast as airplanes, and they're predicted to be done within the next 5 years, and they'll be going from Cleveland to Columbus to Toledo to Indianapolis, Detroit, Chicago, and the center of all of this is Toledo. So, for example, just like how fast it goes, you can go from Toledo to Chicago in 15 minutes on this train, which is pretty fast. And so with Toledo being the center of all this, with how affordable Toledo is and how cheap it is to live here and to have like real estate here, I think Toledo, if this train system really turns out to be what it is, I think Toledo's going to be huge in 5 years. So my game plan,
I think the rent will probably go up if it becomes as popular as you're making it. Yeah.
So this is a very bold and kind of outstretched opinion, but I think Toledo's going to be something pretty soon.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends that will stand by Toledo forever, so you'll definitely not be alone there.
But yeah, so I go off way off tangent. So going back to networking events. So like what? Yeah. So what's your process for looking for networking events?
Well, mine is very digital focused at this point. As because that's kind of, you can kind of connect to everybody. But as much as I can, I go to places like me and Max will like go to the Grog Shop in Cleveland, which is like a place where like bands will play at, or rappers will perform at, and that's how I got connected with this rapper named Kari. I didn't get to make anything for him, but I got connected a bit with his manager. But I was there to actually meet the guy that hand cover art that I was making. I was meeting that artist because he was kind of hanging out with them on their tour, and so I wanted to meet him. And I was like, "You're going to be in Cleveland?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he gave me the date, and I met with him. Same thing happened with his good friend Luke, his name is Uncle Luke, and he directs for a lot of very famous rappers like Future and Young Thug, and his childhood friend Denzel Curry, who, and the same sort of thing happened with Luke, where I said, because I knew he was on tour with Denzel, and so I asked him, when are you coming to Cleveland? And he gave me the date, and he gave me kind of a VIP thing, because I didn't get to go backstage, but he gave me kind of like a guest pass so I can get inside the show without paying. And I got to meet him, so we talked for a little bit, and then he was going to Detroit next, and so I made a hat, one of these Ramus hats, only it was different. It was like black, and it was a bucket hat, and it said Ramus on it. And I gave it to Luke to give to Denzel, and he wore it the whole show in Detroit. So if you look up any like Denzel Curry show in Detroit, he'll be wearing my hat. This says my name on it.
Nice.
So he still has yet to send me like the actual official photos, but I found a couple on Google. So I'm eventually going to post about this on like Instagram, but I have to wait because Luke is super busy. But yeah, at those events, like concerts, is where I was able to network. Portfolio reviews is how I got connected with like industry, like agencies, and cold messaging. When you can like DM someone and just ask them about their process without making it seem like you're using them for something, they'll be a lot more, they'll want to kind of respond and answer your questions if you don't need something from them. If you're like, I need a job, give me a job, no one's gonna answer.
Right.
Just say like
figure out a way to like relate with them and like
work them and ask them about what they do.
Yeah. This is kind of one thing that I've kind of learned is that this is probably a weird way of saying it, but I mean, even just applying this to myself as well, is that a lot of the times people, for the most part, aren't really willing to do something unless they get something in return for it. I mean, obviously there are definitely cases where it's like, if someone sincerely needs help, then you're going to want to help them out. But like, for example, like what you said, if you just go like, hey, I want a job, then they're going to be like,
yes.
Okay, well,
yeah.
Are you super good, or did you just get off college and don't have a lot of experience? I think that's like kind of the best way about going things, is just kind of, instead of just being so upfront, be like, hey, I want a job, be like, hey, I need help, I don't have a job, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
And then they're probably going to be more open to helping you, because it's not, it doesn't come off as you just trying to use them, it's just you trying to figure out what you're doing wrong. It's like you're using them for the right reason instead of the wrong reason. I think you can't necessarily define what is good and what is bad all the time, except for the cats. That's bad. That's a fact. There's no debating that.
Really, the funny part about it is that I'm surprised actually people think it's bad. I don't like musicals. I don't think I like a single musical.
Me neither.
So you could show me the best musical in the world and I'd still hate it. And so I knew I wouldn't like it. Like it's not a surprise to me. What was surprising to me is that everyone agrees with me. that was the weirdest part, because I'm like always talking about how much I love musicals. They're a very popular genre, and I'm just in the minority and I don't really like them. But except for maybe I've seen and heard clips of what's that, Hamilton. I actually did like that.
Okay.
but most of the time I pretty much can't stand them.
Yeah.
And so I felt like a certain warmth because everyone agreed. I'm like, yes, stop. No one make those after this.
I think there's a lot of reasons as to why I got such bad reviews. I think the first reason is, from what I've heard from the movie, everything that they did in the movie, they could have just done in a play without spending $100 million worth of CGI. And in fact, maybe without the CGI, it would have looked better, because another thing, and just watching the previews, the CGI makes them look very, very weird. There's ways to incorporate humans and cats, and how they did was not the right way.
Right.
So it looks like a Frankenstein monster, and it was terrifying. And I kind of want to see the movie, ironically. It's, the movie The Room?
Yes.
Yeah, it reminds me of that, and I love The Room, so I think I'll like Cats for that same reason, because it's so bad that it's good. But from what I heard, it's the only really thing they added with CGI was there were some sparkles here and there, and other than that, it's like you could have saved so much money by not doing CGI and just put a camera out there and record the play. And just the way that they went about it, I also heard that it's like just one big, very seductive furry fest.
Yeah, it's weird part.
It's a very...
You don't want to see involved in that.
It's like something you don't want to see with your parents.
Yeah. And like you don't want to see like cats in that way. Like I don't want to see a sexy cat. I don't want to. I'm not interested.
No.
It's a lot of that. Yeah, there's a whole lot of weirdness. Taylor Swift is in it.
She is, yeah.
And but it's entertaining. But I did leave before it ended.
Yeah.
So that means anything.
I heard I was watching a review on the movie. I heard someone was like falling asleep in the movie. You could actually hear them snoring.
Oh no, my dad has done that before. Not to put him on blast, he's definitely done that.
The only movie I slept towards, and I think it was just I had a lack of sleep, because I don't know how I slept through this. Do you remember the movie Dunkirk?
I haven't seen it, but I know of it. Yeah.
It's the most loudest movie I've ever seen in my life. Right? Sorry, the World War II. Yeah, it's like it's off the coast. They're trying to something's happening. There's airplanes and ships and stuff. Very loud movie. I slept through it somehow. I don't know. It's a good movie. It's just I was very tired.
You would do very well in war.
Yeah. Bombs are going off. Like,
if you ever get drafted, you'll just be in your tent like, hey, he's like, oh yeah, we're in a war right now. But, I don't want to wake you up. You guys.
I think so. No,
feel free to do whatever you want.
Right. And like at the same time, I feel really bad for the people that made the movie for Cats, the people that worked on CGI, because they spent a lot of time on that. Same goes with Sonic the Hedgehog, how they had to redo that. It's like they spent a lot of time on that, but I guarantee you it wasn't their decision to make it how it looked. It was some dumbass at the top that was like, no, you gotta make it look like this. And they were like, okay, well, this is a terrible idea. And so, I mean, that's always the worst. I don't want to be put in that position where I get told I have to make something look bad.
That definitely happens. I think in all sort of creative fields where you're working with a client, where you have to do the thing that you don't want to do and people are going to hate, and then you end up being right, and then they still don't admit it, and then magically sometimes they do, like the Sonic thing, or sometimes they stick to their guns and it fails like we said it would. It's just the way it is. It's always this power hierarchy that we have to be kind of listening to. So it is what it is.
Yeah. One thing I was listening to, another really good podcast, this dude's he does more VFX, but it still relates to anyone that's in the creative industry. Alan McKay, Allan, then McKay.
Okay.
He's really into the entrepreneurial side of it, and so what he does with his clients is whenever they're like, oh, can you do this, this, and that? And like his way of going about it is he'll be like, yeah, I'll see what I can do for you. So like basically what he does is he'll basically say, in a very professional way, no, I can't do that, but I'm going to create something that might relate to what you want to do. Like, it's like saying that, but in the way that the client wants to hear it. And
that's how I do it too. But yeah, you say, no, I can't do that, and I won't.
Right. But instead of saying no, it's like, yeah, I'll see what I can do, and we'll go from there. Also, this next revision, but also make sure in the contract where like, okay, you only have so many revisions, so if I do this work, you're still gonna have to pay half or something, and you blah blah blah, so you don't get ripped off or anything for your time. But yeah,
exactly.
I honestly think there should be some kind of business class or like I said, entrepreneur class that designers or creative people have to take, just because if you do want to go into the freelance world, there's a lot of stuff that they don't teach you that you definitely need to know, so you don't want to get ripped off.
Yeah, and that will happen. I know at BG there was one, but it must have not done well because they'd stopped it after 1 year. So, I think it was weird because the business majors took it too, and so I guess we didn't really mesh well with them. But I didn't. I wasn't in the class that kind of got that privilege. I think that was the class ahead of me, and I only had a few friends that took it. So yeah, it's definitely a smart idea. You need to have. But actually, have you heard of the future, like FUTUR, like without an E, basically the future without an E?
No.
It's this designer who's been, had all these years of experience. He wanted to basically create a resource from that anyone can use for free. So he just makes all these YouTube videos where he teaches you about the business of freelance and design and graphic design and animation and all these things. I've learned everything that I know about business and design from him, Chris Doe. And there's lots of kinds of different formats. Like he has this like segment called Young Guns, where he has like young designers kind of given a certain assignment and they kind of like compete against each other. And then the winner, like I don't know if they get something or they get to like meet Joe or not Joe, Chris or so he's basically just created this very altruistic sort of resource that isn't only for the people that have the money to go to school. He wanted to create something that everyone can use. And it's terrific. It's really amazing. So yeah, I definitely would check that out. I don't know how much it would help you. I know a lot of it's based on like design and graphic design, but I think that it kind of applies to a lot of the creative fields. I think a lot of it, because it's a lot like know your own value. And so when you learn how to negotiate and not kind of sell yourself short, and when someone says, hey, can you do this in 24 hours? I'll give you $50. Instead of saying like, yeah, because you're just happy to be a part of it, you say, no, I'll do it in 72 hours and for $1,000 or something.
Yeah.
Like, teaches you how to negotiate a bit and how to really value who you are. And sometimes you can't do that. Like there's times where I've tried to do that and they're like, okay, fuck off, and they leave.
Yeah.
So the skill that I haven't mastered. So, yeah. So yeah, I would definitely recommend The Future with Chris Doe.
Okay, Future. Right now. Cause yeah, that's important. Chris Doe. Okay, so because like you don't want to. Sorry.
Everything's chrome in the future, is what I said.
Oh yeah, it's also true. Yeah, but like you don't want to, spend all this time for someone like you're not really getting anything out of it. It's it's different if it's someone maybe it's like, hey, you're my friend, I'll do this for you. But if it's some like random,
right.
Some random person, it's it's important to know when to say no as well. It's like, yo, I got other stuff I gotta do. Homie slice. So,
yes.
Homie slice. Home slice.
Yes, homie slice.
My homie slice. but yeah, we're going on like 1 hour and 40 minutes, so I don't want to keep you up all night. So, but No, yeah, it was fun talking to you, and I feel
I
like
know,
I can
man.
talk to you forever. So if you ever wanna
Yeah,
hang out
yeah,
again, this was fun.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, I'm always looking for things to do because now that I'm back, I can actually like see people. Um, so yeah, yeah, just let me know.
Start a
I've
podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, I'm getting a car, a new car, and I'll be
Uh,
able to kind of drive places.
Heck yeah,
Um, yeah, because I broke the other one. So
yeah. I'll have to visit you sometime if you end up moving out to Columbus, and we could do a
yes,
podcast in person without me putting
yeah,
my microphone right into my phone. That sounds a little better. But yeah,
yeah,
there's just like
yeah,
the thing I like about you is that there's like so much that we can talk about. I feel like when it comes to discussing things, we both like to just discuss on and on forever and ever.
yes,
And
yeah. We can go on for it.
even like on social media, I like one of the things I like about you
Yeah,
is that you're very like opinionated and you're not afraid to state your opinion. And I feel like that's so kind of scarce nowadays because people are afraid to state their opinion and kind of go against the
yeah.
flow.
Maybe I should be a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can be. Maybe I can be a little bit jarring in my opinionatedness. I try and soften myself a bit because sometimes people are like,
They can't handle the truth.
yeah, yeah.
No,
So
but
I'm
yeah,
learning.
yeah. But it's still cool that you are able to kind of give out your opinion, and I think for the most part you usually do it in a sincere and for the most part non-rude manner. You know, you're
I try
not.
to, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Not cross the wrong way, but I never mean it that way.
yeah, yeah. Except there was that one time, it was something politics related, and you said something.
Yeah,
I was like, "What the heck?" And then
so funny.
I just like misread it the wrong way. That's the one thing I hate about text is you can read something two
But,
very polar opposite ways because it could come off as
uh,
sarcastic, but it's just not sarcastic, and
you
yeah.
know, it's funny because I was telling Max and Quinn about it, and I was like, for some reason, Daniel like flipped out on me. You go post, and then I showed it to him. I'm like, well, yeah, of course he did. Look what you said. And I was like, what did I say? And I was like, no, I was saying he just looked like him. I didn't even watch the video. Like I had no idea what I was saying. I really just said this looks like Daniel in the future. Like he looks like him. I don't even know his story. That's why you're like, oh, you think I'm gonna? I'm like, no, I didn't even know
I
that's
was
what
like,
the video.
dude, it was like his wife is dying. You can't say that, like, bro.
So what an obscure thing for me to say. Like, your wife's gonna die, Daniel.
It's like that was a very low blow.
Yeah, right. Very. And Max was like, "You gotta stop reposting things that you don't read." I'm like, "Yeah, I really do need to not do that." So,
Yeah, that
I
was
do
funny.
pull other people into it very often.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Dude, honestly, I think if you don't mind, I would love to just do a podcast just on politics. I feel like
Yeah.
we would have a very interesting discussion.
Yeah, no, I would love to. You know, I'm not the most knowledgeable. I would like to also, if we could, pull in someone that I feel is like a real expert.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of as like a
that would be.
mediator almost, like
Yeah, because I really I don't want to kind of do the ego thing where I think that because as it comes to design, I feel like I'm not an expert, but I feel like I know enough to where I can talk on it.
sure.
When it comes to politics, I feel like I'd be talking out of my ass a lot, and I really would like to have someone that can say no, you're wrong, and then fact check me. I don't want to give out information that's false. I don't want to be Donald Trump. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to have someone on that knows what they're talking about.
That's fair.
Not that you don't, but like someone that
Right.
it really focuses on this shit, like for like a living, or at least for as one of their side.
Yeah.
Side.
I have completely flip-flopped from like 4 years from now to now cuz
Yeah.
I just don't trust mainstream media anymore, which is interesting because like that was my major was broadcast, and so like local journalism is usually correct, but when it comes to mainstream, it's just so opinionated and there's so
Right,
many
yeah.
agendas going on.
listen to NPR. It's the only news source I listen to now.
They're the best, but even because so I actually one of the guys I randomly talks to through Twitter, he works at NPR in Seattle, and he's like, yeah, man, like NPR, it's good, but we got agenda too, and I was like, what?
Sure.
Because I usually listen to NPR too, but like everyone's got stuff going on, I guess.
But like that's not even just mainstream stuff. I think the big issue with mainstream media is that it's the agendas are fueled by money. With NPR, the agenda it doesn't have to do with money because they're publicly funded, and so they don't rely on saying a thing to get money. And so everyone has a bias, and so it's possible that maybe the head of PR or whatever is like, maybe don't, support Donald Trump or something, but I don't know. I think everyone there is fairly educated, and so I don't know why they would even want to.
Right.
But they always get people that disagree to be a part of the discussion. And so, and not in like a sports centered, like CNN way, like they do it in a way where they have a good discussion.
Yeah.
Almost like Joe Rogan, but better, in my opinion, because it's not like a fist fight of words. It's like a proper like sit down and debate. No one's getting emotional. Everyone's just like, it does happen sometimes where people get upset and they yell and they hang up, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, the thing that I find annoying, and this is something going through my major, is that, like I said, when it comes to local news, if you are biased, you're gonna get fired. Like, you cannot be biased.
Yeah.
You tell the story. You are not allowed to put your opinion in there. It is just the cold, hard truth as to what you were able to find, and you try and like make it go a certain way or another, or else you're gonna get in trouble. And as soon as you go to mainstream or your own personal media, it goes out the window. So and unfortunately, we're just, I think there's going to continue to be local news in some kind of format, but from where it is now to where it was, say, 20 years ago, it is completely different. Like, newspapers are disappearing and just...
Right.
And so we're basically getting to this point where it's just not looking good.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other conversation we could have another time.
Yeah.
But...
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Because I can talk about for another hour, so I don't want to do that. But yeah, it was good talking to you, Home Slice.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was. It's been a pleasure.